So today I want to talk about feeling our feels, or rather not feeling them. So there are many feelings, such as feeling proud, joy, happiness, contentment, anger, fear, embarrassment, shame, loneliness, jealousy, rage, depression, hurt. Loads of different emotions, and I've named some positive ones there and some what we might deem as less positive emotions too. And often we will struggle to feel not just the less positive ones, but also the positive ones. So let me give you an example. Have you heard that saying? Don't get too excited, then you can't be disappointed. Well, as my pregnancy progressed and I was getting closer and closer to meeting my daughter, I was getting excited. I was excited to meet this little human being that I'd been growing. And because I had that belief in the back of my head that I shouldn't get too excited because I might be disappointed, the anxiety in me really started to rise because I was excited, and therefore was I going to be disappointed. And then I was having anxiety, and anxiety is an emotion that I judged as one that I shouldn't have, that I should be able to cope, and I shouldn't have this emotion, and maybe it makes me weak or not good enough if I'm having anxiety. So there was a reaction, a need for me to block my feeling of excitement, and also a reaction of anxiety that I also felt I needed to block. So positive and what we might deem as less positive. And I say positive and what we deem as less positive because all emotions just are. They're not good or bad, they just are. But we tend to grow up having categorized them into both. So when we talk about feeling our feelings, it's not just those that we might deem less desirable. It's also those such as feeling proud. We might feel embarrassed to feel proud. We might have experienced people knocking us down for feeling proud and saying, oh, you love yourself, or you're too big for your boots. So when we feel proud of ourselves, we might feel embarrassed or ashamed to feel that way. And so we suppress that as well. Things like happiness and joy, we can get afraid that if we allow ourselves to really feel them and lean into them, that they might go away, and that would be really painful and scary. And so it feels safer to not feel them in the first place. And then things like anger, we pretty much, as women especially, have grown up to be taught that anger is very bad and unattractive and we shouldn't feel it. So rather than being taught how to express it in healthy ways, we suppress it and push it down. And my personal way of doing that was to smile when I felt angry, to really cover that up. So lots of different types of emotions, and a few examples of the ways in which we might feel that we need to not feel them. And this reaction to emotions becomes very subconscious. It becomes an automatic pattern, and what we develop over time are coping mechanisms and ways to block them. So I would describe myself as an empath. I feel other people's emotions very strongly. And as a child, I grew up in a home where my parents had separated, and there was lots of anger and resentment between them. My mum was quite sad, and I had grandparents who were a big influence in my life that really didn't express their emotions, but they could be felt. They didn't express them outwardly, but they were pushed down and suppressed, and I was really tuned into that and could feel it. Now, none of my parents had been taught how to feel and process their emotions, and therefore they weren't able to teach me how to feel and process my emotions. And because I was so tuned into all of their emotions and that of other people, it felt very heavy and very overwhelming. So I developed a coping mechanism of disconnecting from them and from blocking them. And as I got older, I found ways to do that, such as workaholism, keeping very busy, not being able to sit still, lots of sugar, and I smoked a lot of weed. So these were coping mechanisms that I adopted to block feeling my feelings. And it worked for a while until it no longer works. And what happens is I was still having those feelings, but I was not allowing myself to sit with them and to process them. And so they were almost stacking up in my body. And that's how I got to a point where I was in a severe state of stress and and ended up with lots of physical ailments in my body, namely an autoimmune condition, because I was not feeling my feelings, and it became very detrimental after a time. So some signs that you might not be feeling your feelings are things like compulsions and addictions, and excess. So alcohol, sugar, smoking, drugs, things like spot picking, hair pulling, keeping very busy, finding it very difficult to relax, inappropriate smiling and laughing, finding it difficult to be alone, being quite heavy on judging and blaming others, lots of worrying, anxiety, and finding it very difficult to take a compliment. So they're just a few ways in which it indicates that you might not be feeling your feelings. And I've probably have experienced all of those throughout my time. And so what I wanted to do today was really just highlight an array of feelings, how it might show up in our lives if we're not feeling them, and encourage you to find ways to feel and process your emotions. And of course, the first thing is to identify that you're not doing it, and then to recognize, well, what are the things that I do when I am subconsciously trying to avoid my feelings? Am I scrolling on my phone? Am I going to the fridge? Am I eating lots of chocolate? Am I doing lots of jobs? Am I keeping busy? Am I working longer hours? Identify what are the things that you subconsciously automatically do in order to not to feel your feelings, and then create space in your life to reflect on that, to identify, well, what are the feelings that I'm trying to avoid here? So I was a spot picker. I would obsessively pick my face. I would go to the mirror and stand there for ages and look for things to pick in my face. And through my self-reflection and healing work, I recognized that that's what I did when I felt anger and also shame about who I was. And my skin, I still have some scars, which I am wearing proudly these days, because I am who I am and I love who I am. But I very, very rarely pick my face these days. And on the odd occasion I do, I'm like, there's something here that I am trying not to feel. And then I'll go to a quiet space, maybe I'll meditate, do some yoga, get my journal out, go for a walk, sit in nature, but create some mental space in which to identify what is the feeling that I am trying to avoid here. And so I want to encourage you to do the same. So get your pen and paper out, rewind this a little bit, write those things down. How can you create space in your life to feel your feelings, to understand your feelings, to understand what you do when you're blocking them? And also, I mentioned that I was an empath and that I feel other people's feelings. So part of my self-care protocol is to remove the impact of other people's emotions. So it might be dancing or singing or having a shower, or deliberately thinking about removing other people's emotions from me and deciding to put them to the side and remove them from my energy. And if you're into being spiritual at all, then I love a bit of sage, and I love to clear my energy by saging myself. So a few thoughts. I'd be interested to hear, does any of that resonate for you? Do you recognize yourself in that at all? And if you've got any questions, please pop them below.